Welcome to the Utu Na Uzalendo Podcast. My name is Mwariama, the founder of Uzalendo Foundation. On this podcast, we amplify ordinary Kenyans doing extraordinary things. In this episode, we tell the story of Dorphanage Mutuma, a spoken word artist, a poet, a musician, a man who speaks truth to power with love and sometimes without love. Tune in and listen to his story. Karibuni. Dorphanage.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Utu Na Uzalendo Podcast.
Asante sana. It's been a minute and it's been a long while coming.
It's been a long time coming. You're supposed to do this earlier last year.
Yeah.
But time could not allow.
Yeah, we're here. We're here now.
Sasa tuko. Sisi ndio tuko. This is an easy conversation. We want to know who Dorphanage is.
Yeah.
What Dorphanage means. Why Dorphanage. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Your name, umetoka wapi, umezaliwa wapi, ulienda shule wapi. Then you can proceed from there.
Ukipata ID yangu uone Dennis Mutuma Mutua, hiyo ni yangu, si ya mtu mwingine. So Dennis Mutuma Mutua was born in Timau Meru, right on the slopes of Mount Kenya. I've went to school in a local primary school inaitwa Mutedia Primary School, all the way from nursery school to class 8. Then got into Kaga Boys, and then in Form 3, something happened, to try truancy and all sort of things. Like I think it was and that's why I understand sometimes when children riot in schools, because schools are ran like dictatorships, like sometimes kids have a lot they want to say, but there's nobody to listen. So anyway, what happens is I had to change schools, and then so I finished my high schooling in Kisimo Secondary. After that,
you were expelled?
Well, it was one of those indefinite suspensions. So I was forced to change schools. I was forced to, and no, but I feel like that was also the time when I kind of found myself, like, because that sort of humbled me, because I think coming from Kagaboys was a provincial school then, it's still a provincial school, I think, and so coming from Kagaboys, and then I thought I was gonna get a chance in on Tulili Boys, which was a district school but was doing pretty well. So I was like, there's no way I can miss a chance there. But then I think 1 week into the new term, my grandfather, my late grandfather at time reaches out to the principal, and he was like, seems like your son is not gonna get a chance here. So I was forced to now settle for, pretty much a divisional school. And I think that kind of got me like,
what you used to call Harambe school.
Yeah. Kind of got me thinking that now I have to really like start owning up to my, to my decisions, my choices. Right. And I think since that time on, I decided I'm going to be responsible for any decision I made. And that's how I've somehow ended up, figuring out like there was something artistic in me, and pursued that path.
Was that in school?
Yeah, I was in high school. And when I got to Kisima, so before then, when I in primary school, I didn't know, like, there was nothing artistic about me. I didn't care about the arts. I didn't even care about music, really. I was just there. I was just a kid who was quite good in school. And so people like stop, tell you, you just pursue your education. And that was because I think I was top 3 throughout primary school, right? So, but then I go to high school, and that's when I became like exposed to music, like as an expression, really. Because before then I just used to hear music, but it didn't really click with me. So, through entertainment sessions and all that, listen to music, I'm like, And then I realized I'm kind of catching on quite fast.
You were part of music festivals, drama festivals?
Drama a bit at that time. And so so I was like, I would love to try this someday. But then I think, and up until when I changed schools, so I go to Kisima, and I find these two guys who used to remix popular songs, and so they're taking songs that were popular at the time and they were remixing them. I was like, that's interesting.
They put their own words.
Yeah. I would love to do that. So that's when I started writing now. Writing not as an academic endeavor, but as an expression.
Yeah, a form of expression.
Yeah. So, and from that, it just went on. So I thought I was a rapper, because that's what I saw. That's what I resonated with first, but so with time, also because I didn't have any musical background or anything, so I was just mostly offbeat and so, but I used to write whatever is in my mind, whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm thinking. So with time, it just kind of developed. And then when I got to college now, I went to Meru Technical Training Institute, right, which is now Meru National Polytechnic. I did my IT diploma there. I wanted to do mass communication actually, but there was a sponsorship that I was going to get to do like a self-sponsored degree, but then it kind of missed out on that. So I was forced to, settle for something else. And that's what I did. So while I was there, I was a part of the guidance and counseling club. So we used to do outreaches in high schools. So I would go and perform because I didn't have any instrumental, no instruments at that time. So I just perform and people started calling it spoken word. I was like, okay.
Because I think that's the time the art of the spoken word was emerging.
Yeah, because that's
before that it was poetry.
Yeah, because that's around 2009, 2010, right? And that's in Meru. So it's because even in Nairobi at that time it was still very young, because I think some of the first spoken word poetry events around Nairobi was around 2008, I think, right? Because that's when Kwani started, like. So and then so when I would go perform, people started calling it spoken word. I was like, okay. And so I now started like digging into what is this spoken word, and so I understand it's performed poetry, right? So I didn't have really an interest in poetry as an art form before that, right? It was just something like comes in the English papers or Swahili
for
shairi,
literature or something.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the way poetry was introduced to us academically. It's not something you fell in love with. Actually felt like a burden.
It was painful, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember also doing.
Yeah, because it was very elitist, like very unrelatable, right? For me, I don't, I couldn't understand most of it, right? And so I started doing that, and then I was also I also kind of joined the Meru music scene at the time, which around 2008, going all the way to 2011. So I would go to there's a guy who used to have a studio. His name was Somi. So it used to be Somi Records. Go there, hang out there with other musicians. Sometimes just listen somebody drop like a song. If it's a song I love, maybe I write a verse for it. If they want me to drop the verse in the song. So I did a bit of those, but also writing my own stuff. But at this time now, because I was the only one who's doing spoken word at the time there, got to a point where I was feeling like an elephant in the house, right? So it's like I'm getting too big for this space, and there's not enough platforms for me. So I needed a challenge. I needed to do more. And at that time, I was finishing my diploma 2011. So I finished my diploma, and then hung about Meru a bit. Until now, 2012, the beginning of 2012, I got an opportunity to come to Nairobi, right?
Just before you come to Nairobi, you talked about high school being, being the strictness and the kind of authoritarianism. Could you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, I think there's this kind of misconception that children have nothing to worry about. Our children have nothing to, other than the primary, things like other than them living and studying, like they have no thoughts of themselves or whatsoever. And that's why if a child asks a critical question, anaambia wewe umekuwa unajua nani umekuwa ukiongea na nani ama who's really like advising you.
Who's influencing you?
Who's influencing. So that's why kuna some parents when ukienda kwa auntie yako endi anakuambia vitu kama hizi
ama kutembea na kijana fulani
so they don't think kids have a mind of their own, right? And kids have minds of their own. And so a lot of the time, and especially in that teenage and adolescence time, like there's a lot happening in your life. Because for me, that's the time when a lot of things started to make sense about my childhood, right? Because by that time, I had lost both parents, right? Yeah. Because I lost my mom when I was joining nursery school. I didn't even know. I came to know later. I lost my dad when I was in class 8, right? Finishing my primary school. And so, but I can't say we had any sort of a relationship for me to feel the loss. But now when I got to high school, that's when I started hearing stories about, the things that actually happened. And now, by that time, they're starting to make sense to me. And I felt kind of lied to by the people around me. I felt like they should have told me certain things.
So you're discovering things about your parents.
Yeah, about myself.
Or yourself.
Yeah. Right, about my family.
And that time you're being taken care of by your
by my grandparents, like my paternal grandparents. They're pretty much who, because what happened is, so my mom was a teenage mother, right? So by the time she was having me when she was like 24, she was like 14 years, like, she got pregnant with me when she was in class 8, right? Like towards the end, so she had me after. But now she was from a slum, like you can imagine what a slum in Timau looks like, just like a small whatever.
That's that poor.
Yeah. So and so, but my dad on the other hand, he was from a quite well-off family, like in a village kind of scenario. My grandparents were quite well-off because my paternal grandfather was a banker at some point. Worked for the municipal council of Meru at some point. So he was quite
relatively. He was middle class within that community.
Yeah, within that community, right? And also, so even what happened is that they used to live in Kerua before. There's a place called Kerua, and then, but he had land in Timau. So what happened is that, so he built a small house in Timau and then sent my dad there, being the firstborn, to kind of be there, the caretaker for a bit. And then they all moved there, right? And so, but also by my dad being there, being a young man, kind of, and of course, at that time...
You robbed the cradle.
Yeah. At that time, there's other young men. The families were not that many because the land there was quite, like, most people had like 20, 30 acres at the time. So you can imagine there wasn't that many families. But so all the young men kind of ganged up, and also there was money to... At that time, money wasn't an issue, especially for them because they're doing farming. At that time, you used to just plant and come and harvest. The weather was good. There was enough rain. There was, the seeds were right on point. So money wasn't a problem, really. And also even for alcohol, at that time, I imagine it was quite affordable, right? So, yeah, so that became kind of the lifestyle, right? And then now, so when eventually, because my maternal grandmother on the other hand, living in a slum, she used to brew changa there, right? And I think it's part of those endeavors of my dad and his cronies going to drink there that they see this guy. You see the way it happens the way for the longest time, the way it's always happened. I don't know if it's still the same case now, is that once a girl, once a boob starts showing, right? Every man starts paying attention. Right? And I think that's pretty much what happened. And of course, any girl at that time, at that in that area would have loved to be associated
And
with
that
this
was
family.
normalized
Yeah,
because I remember my experience growing up in the village. Class 8 girls who are just getting into teenage.
Yeah.
Some of them would be taken advantage of by teachers. By
Yeah.
the same teachers who are anatumwa kwa nyumba ya mwalimu, and then that it was like kind of normal,
Yeah.
you know, or even being invited over the weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it still happens.
Well, I can bet it still happens, but
In the
not
rural
as
areas,
much,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because also the law
Mm.
has kind of become more stringent in those kind of situations.
Mm.
Yeah, so basically, so my mom gets pregnant with me, right? My dad is, you know, actually loves her, you know, so he wants to settle with her. So he goes to his parents. So eventually when she's introduced to my grandfather now, because he used to he had an office in Timau town. At that time he had retired, so he was just running his affairs from there. So they introduced, and then so my dad is like, I want to marry her, what? But then my grandparents were like, nope, you can't marry that girl from that place. So pretty much, that was classism in play now, right? It's like, yeah, we can't be associated with.
Something else also that's normalized.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
those communities. Yeah, yeah.
And so that happens, and I think so. She, of course, she's gullible, she's impressionable, and she expects that he's going to fight for their quote unquote love, right? And then, but him is very dependent on his parents, so he doesn't want to lose that privilege. So he pretty much has to adhere to what they're saying, and so he tells her, you know, it's not possible. I think so. This is a story I got from my uncle, my mom's late brother.
This is happening now when you're in high school.
Yeah, this is happening when I'm in high school. Right? So this time, so my uncle, I went to see him in hospital. He had TB, and him now he was like a functional alcoholic. So what used to happen is that, so TB you have to do like the six months injection, right? Without fail. So he used to go, people would take him to hospital when he's pretty much on his last leg. And then he would go, you know, you put in isolation ward there, and then eventually he recovers. But then he, you know, recovers, and then when he feels like he's healthy enough, he runs away. Runs away from hospital, goes back to
drinking.
The slum, where he used to stay. He'll go into Madare. So he goes back there and, you know, continues with the drinking. You visit him with some milk. He trades it for, you know.
For alcohol.
Yeah. And so pretty much, so that became the cycle until eventually, you know, his body gave up on him. Right. But no, so this time I went to see him in Nanyuki General Hospital. And so that's when he told me that story. Like, so he told me that when I was still a toddler, my mom, I think after now, my dad has, you know, I told her that it's not possible for them to be together. So she was very angry, frustrated. So she takes me and goes to my grandparents' home and drops me by the gate. You know, like it's quite a big compound, and the gate is it's like 100 meters from the main house. So she put me at the gate, and then they had the dogs barking. And I go to check, and there's a bundle of something there, right? But so my uncle told her, if you can do that, if you can just go and drop a toddler out there, a baby that's still suckling out like that, you know, you might as well start forgetting you have a brother, right? On the other hand, my grandfather told my dad, if you two don't come up with an arrangement about this, I'll make sure both of you are locked up, and then I'll take care of the kid, right? So they had to come up with an arrangement. And that's how I end up now being taken care of by my mom and her side of the family until I'm like 5 years old, right? And then after that, they passed me on to my dad's side.
Wow. And your mom actually gave you up when you're 5?
She by that time she'd moved on. Like she at that time, because even when I was living with her, it was more often than not, it wasn't really like what happens to a teenage girl when she's 14, when she's given birth at 14, right?
Of course, you're ostracized.
And also, no, even forget the ostracization, because I think her mother also had pretty much the same. So she didn't, for her, was kind of the reality. But now it's just that she was poor. She had like 3 other younger kids than her, right? Because she has, my grandmother had 5 kids, right? So there's a firstborn son, my mom, and then 3 daughters. So she has 3 other kids. So you can't, so for her, she's living in a slum, right? So she can't really like have 4 kids and another kid in the same like small one, you'll go single room.
And it's a child taking care of children.
Yeah. So, and this is how I've seen it happen most of the times. Like, it's just this young girl is forced to now kind of become independent, right? She's still a teenager, don't forget that. Become independent. And so the only other way they know how to is now means she has to hook up with another man who's going to take care of her, right? And then, so in my mom's case, okay, she was taken, I think, to a vocational course where she learned tailoring and stuff. So she was doing a bit of those jobs. But now she hooks up with a cop there. Like, this guy, judging by the pictures I've seen of him, he was also like a very young guy. He's probably like just come out of, Kiganjo, right? He's very young. Like, I don't think he was even 20 by the time he was, so they hook up. So my youngest memories I have, like, is in the police base, because that's where we used to stay now. For Timau police base. That's where, so that my childhood, the youngest memories I have in the airport. So we are there. But then also my maternal grandmother at some point went back to Maua or to Mutua, where she had been married, and I think she got back and she took me with her. So we went there, stayed for quite a while, right? She even tried to take me to school. I was like 3 years old, like, and then so she took me to school, and then I when I realized she's heading back home, I couldn't stay. I was like, no, we're going back together. Also, the other thing I remember about that time is that so there's this tradition of brew in Aitomarwa, like, so it's pretty much like busa, I think. No, it's not muratina really. It's kind of busa because it's kind of porridge, but it's potent, right? Like kama uji, lakini ni potent. So what would happen is that when she used to drink, like my grandmother, she drank all through her life. Actually buried her in 2021. That's when she passed away. She's quite something, right? So she would take me on those trips because she couldn't leave me with anybody. So we used to go, and I think because she don't want me to. Also, the marrow is pretty much porridge, and so I would get a
sip of it.
Not a sip. I'll get like maybe like half a cup. Anything means I would be full, but also I'll be a bit
tipsy.
So it means I'm not going to disturb. Right? So she can now enjoy herself without worrying about me. Nimeshiba na so niko tu sawa. Yeah, and so that happens, but then there was the back and forth. So when I go back to now, when I was with my mom in Timau, so oftenly what would happen is say that when a younger sister was around, she would be like the babysitter most of the time. But for the other times, by the time now I was big enough, she would just go to whatever hustles, and then I'm just left to hang around. It's pretty much what happens with kids.
Yeah. I think by the time you're 5 now,
like,
you take care of yourself.
Yeah. So, and that was life. So I would just stay out there with other kids playing. I never used to love to go back home, because this is the other memory I remember is that I used to go with other kids to their places, right? So I'll go there and I want to spend the night there. So I'll go and spend the night there. And then in the morning, it used to happen like all the time. Like my mom would show up with the slippers. Like lazima ngenikujia na slippers. Like,
so you started sleepovers before?
Yeah,
sleepovers were the thing.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, so I would just slippers, nachapwa, but I'll do the same thing again. Yeah, and so when
was your mom's that cop, was he abusive?
No, I don't remember much about him. I don't think he was, like, I think he was an okay guy. So by the time I don't have any memories of him. Like, because also him is used to work like all day.
So what led to you now being taken to your paternal grand?
No, I think that's the arrangement that had been made. That if when I was old enough to go to school, that they could. At that time, kids used to go to school at 6.
And your
So
dad had he married?
No, at that time, okay. Of course,
He was still
he's
young, of
he's,
course.
he's a young man, he's having his escapades. It's because until later on in life, that's what I came to realize. Like there's so many, he was a Casanova and he's left quite an imprint
Sounds
around
like my
Timau,
father.
right?
My father is similar. I think we are very similar. I'm hearing my story in that because I have a
what
dad
happens
who's
is that
very amorous.
Yeah. So it was so when I was like 5 now, that's when I'm passed on to. But he's not settled at that time. So I'm taken on by his parents, right? I wasn't the only one. There was 2 of my other cousins still in the same. So we pretty much grew up with my cousins as brothers and sisters, right? So and that's my childhood there. Like, so we grew up in so I went to school and I was so if we're not school, we are looking after my grandfather's livestock, hunting.
So at this time, you're with your grandparents, but you know that this guy is your father.
Yeah,
but
he's
but
we don't have a relationship.
In a role in bringing you up.
We don't have a relationship. He used to be there because you see, the fact that he wasn't settled, it means he's staying at the same house. Like when you get initiated, right, into manhood, you build your own. Right?
The Ingira.
Yeah. So basically, the house that had been built for them, like, because there was now for my dad, now this other side of the family, now my paternal side of the family, is like 4 sons and 1 daughter. So my grandparents had 4 sons and 1 daughter.
So he was still staying in, I think when I was growing up in Kirinyaga, we used to call them Cubu. Like a 1-room house.
Yeah.
That you stay in as a young, your father builds for you as a young man.
Yeah.
When you're after circumcision, so that you can move out of your mother's house.
Yeah. So that's what, but now theirs was big because they didn't get initiated there because they had been initiated. So I think that the person who actually got initiated is the last born brother. But the house was built to be big so that he could accommodate 4 of them, right? Because there was 4 brothers. And so he was there. I used to see him, but when he got drunk, that's when he would come and tell me, son, you know what? We used to love to go, me son, I'm drunk, but please don't, be like me, But for me, I was just used to piss me off. Like, even as a kid, it pissed me because what are you telling me? You shouldn't be telling me anything. If you need to do anything, you need to be showing me, right? And when you're sober, you don't really talk to me. We don't have a relationship, right? So I can't say I had any relationship with him, like, because the one memory I have of him is this one time he was plowing with oxen, right? And then so what happened mostly. So you're using 2 oxen, and you're plowing. So you need somebody to kind of control them so that you don't. If you're preparing the land for planting, so you don't veer off the lines, right? So I was the person doing that. I don't know, something happens and one of the bulls kind of goes off and then he hit me.
The bull hit you?
No, him.
Oh,
so because one of the bulls kind of pushed the other out of the lane, so he hit me. I've never felt such pain. Not physical pain, but emotional pain. Yeah. Because I couldn't understand it. Like you have the number. And at that time I wasn't outspoken. I couldn't speak up. I didn't know how to say. So just all there was just tears falling from my eyes. I couldn't. Like, you're supposed to be my father. That's your primary job. You're not doing it, and you think so. If you can do your primary job, what permission do you think you have to hit me? Like, what right? Right? It couldn't make sense to me. Because if I felt like I didn't mind being,
Like
hit
the only
and-
act of fatherhood
yeah.
is violence.
yeah, like,
And
and it
you've-
wasn't even a justified,
Mm.
because hit, like because the bull moved, it happens, right? But what right do you have to hit me? I think that pain stuck with me for a very long time. Like I was very bitter with him for a very long time because it didn't make sense to me, right? I think long past he was dead, I was still angry. Like I was.
How did he, what happened? How did he die? How did
Eh.
your mom, first of all, die?
My mom, I'm not quite sure, but like, so the thing is, I always feel like the way I love to see it, like I feel like I am the sacrifice of our youth, right? Because it's like she was a child and then she was a woman, right? There was no in between. She didn't have, like, so people say it's the mistake, like the mistakes of youth, right? But then at that time the mistake of youth means, and the way you see, how our society is, right? If the moment you become a mother, you become a woman by default. People don't see the child anymore, right? You could be 30 years old. If you don't have a kid, you're still a girl. If you're 10 years old and you have a baby, you become a woman to people's eyes, right? And I feel like, that's why I feel like I'm the sacrifice of our youth, because when it happened, she wasn't a child anymore. She was a woman. And now you see what that has done is that you've thrown the woman into the deep end of life, really, right? She has to step up in whatever way she can. Like, and so, okay, the stories of like this one time, and I think these are part of the things that I found out that got me really angry as a teenager. Is that, so I was so for the longest time, my grandparents, the house that they used to live in was like a wooden house, right? And so while I was in high school, that's when they started building a brick house. And so that's the guys who were building it. So they're talking, right? Oh, you remember that woman? Her name was, so my mom was known as Asha. Like, okay, that was not her name. That was, I think, the way I hear is that for her and her and the brother, because the firstborn, secondborn, their father was a Muslim, right? So because even for my uncle, alikuwa anaitwa Abu, right? Which was from, and my mom was called Asha, but that was not ID name. The ID name was like Penin and Kata, right? So they're talking. Hey, remember, what happened to her? No, I don't know. So somebody says, I don't know, like something along the lines of, she was sick. I don't know, went to hospital, and then tested positive for HIV at the time. Like that's 95-6, right? It's
Oh, no, it was totally unknown.
Yeah. That time it was like a death sentence, really,
Yeah,
right?
I think, and the stigma was crazy. Yeah.
And I don't know, took something, some poison or something. So that's that story I had there, right? But then I asked again somebody, and then they were like, she, when she was dating the cop, right? She there's another friend of ours, and then she invited, the friend invited her to a place. It's like that friend had eyes for the cop as well, right? And so she went there, and then she was served something. It's like and she started vomiting, and she didn't make it through. So I don't know which story is which. I don't even but basically those are the stories I know. But
so there's a story of suicide and the story of murder,
of poison,
being murdered.
Yeah.
So a love triangle.
Yeah. So I don't know which one is which, but either could be a possibility. Which, in the looking at things in that context, it's very, each one of them makes a lot of sense, right? But then, so before my dad was also like, he was sick, like it was, but also he was like, at that time he had been a functional alcoholic for such a long time. So his body also pretty much was giving up.
They gave up.
Right?
Mm.
Because as far as I can remember, like more often than not, he used to, just people would just pick him on the road and just drop him.
Right? Well, it was those ones.
Yeah. Sometimes he would just come, he's at the door, he's unlocked the padlock, but then he can't get himself out, so he just dropped.
It means he doesn't eat or eat healthy.
Yeah. So I think for me, those images, they really pissed me. I used to hate it, because fuck, man,
So this is what is playing now back itself for you in high school.
Yeah, all these things, all these experiences. I'm beginning to, of course, I'm also now beginning to understand the world. I'm beginning to see
You're exposed to
other people's experiences,
kids,
right? Yeah.
Different families.
Yeah.
Different, when you're in high school, people are telling different stories about their family. So you've taken this, what you've grown up with, as normal.
Yeah.
But now here you're exposed to
these other different experiences and realities. Yeah. So I was now I'm beginning to feel like my life would have been much better if my parents had made better choices. At that time, I didn't know my mother was a teenager when she had me. At that time, I thought it was just another relationship, right? And so I was very angry. I don't even know I survived Form 1 and 2 because I was pretty much a rolling stone. Just there. Because I was angry about myself. I was angry at my parents who are dead already. I was angry, about everything and everybody, right? And so I was on edge all the time, right? It was when I was feeling like I was feeling, you at that point I was at a point where I was feeling like, I really don't care. Because even me being a truant was kind of an expression of that. I was just, doing. I feel like if anybody tries to ask any questions, I just, kind of take off the uniform and give it to them. They can go to school if they want. That's where I was.
To sneak out of school.
Yeah, yeah. And not ready for the repercussions. I also felt like if anybody tries to kind of, quarrel me up, that would be the end of schooling for me.
Because you're at that age, our school system is designed to. The reason why you put on uniforms, supposed to create a conformist group of people.
Yeah.
People who are uniform, people who don't question, who don't think, who don't. And here you are now discovering this about yourself.
Discovering my individuality.
But you're supposed to just
my independence.
Toe the line.
Yeah. So it kind of feels like everybody is against me, right? And I think, that's so when I was saying that schools are ran like dictatorships, that's basically it. You have all these people who are discovering their independence, their individuality, but you're trying to.
The high school is the final point of suppression of individuality.
Yeah. Right. So you're trying to kind of put them to conform to the order of things, right? And that has to give birth to something else, right? So when kids want to, they're looking to express themselves, they're looking to be heard, and they're not getting heard, what happens, right? So they respond in the same way they see older people respond, right? So when people are protesting, they burn things, they throw stones, right? They fight back. And so, because that's what they know, that's what they are going to express. And that's why they ban dormitories, that's why they, break glasses and all that. But if somebody took time to actually listen to their grievances, that can be avoided, right?
I we are living in this, or rather we've been living in the so-called information age. So it's not like when maybe our parents were growing up when there was only one radio station controlling information. Now these kids, like the Gen Z, have multiple sources of information. You can't really just focus them on one thing. One way of thinking.
Yeah.
So I think your generation now, you're the guys who are coming to that place where you have access to so much information.
Yeah, because I think we came on that age when now the FM era, where now the FM station kind of became a reality, like a serious reality. So that time there's the Capital FMs and the Kiss FMs and the Metro FMs happening, right? So of course there's all these experiences, that we are sourcing information from. At that time we're not even listening to the Daya Taifas anymore. Like, just, like, yeah.
So thanks for sharing that bit about your teenage years. So now you've finished college, you've joined the art scene in Meru, and then you've outgrown it.
Yeah.
How do you find yourself in Nairobi?
So in Nairobi, there's a cousin of mine. I was in high school with him. He was an year ahead of me in high school, right? So he finished high school. So he was in Kaga Boys as well. But he was even a school captain at some point. Like, he's the guy that pretty much like picked me. But I think I was.
These are the guys you've grown up, the cousins you've grown up with.
Not the ones I've grown up with from it was a distant cousin, right? So he's when Kaga Boys with him, but then I left, and then he finished and joined Kemu. He joined Kemu. Him now, I kind of I think he's so he wanted to join the military, right? He wanted to join the military. So when he joined Kemu, he was very deliberate on, so he started, doing like runs, so he started like seriously working out, like running and, preparing for recruitments. And when he actually came, the recruitments happened, they picked him, right? They picked him, and so he joined the army. So at that time he had graduated from there, and then he was based in Utawala, Langata, whatever. While he was there, so he opened a shop, like a cyber in Juja, around Jaikwat. So he reaches out to me, and so after I was done with my diploma, he reaches out. He's like, "Hey, how are you doing? Can you?" So he's like, "So I opened a business here. If you don't have anything serious you're doing at the moment, you can come and help me out while you're figuring your stuff, right?" I was like, "All right." So actually, for me, the way I looked at it, because at that time, now that's around the time when I'm feeling like an elephant in the room, right? So I was like, okay, now this is the opportunity for me, because I had already seen on TV and read the news and that there was Slum Africa happening, there was Wamatai Live happening at the time. So I wanted to be able to get to those platforms, and so I looked at it and I was like, this is my chance to come to Nairobi, right? So I 2012, towards the end of January, I hit the road. I get to Juja, and so pretty much started out, like helping about run the shop. So what I would do is, throughout the week, I'm working. Friday evenings, I would come to town, like where there's any event happening, I'll reach out to the people organizing. I'll be like, yeah, I want to be a part of that, right? And so I think Slum Africa was happening in that February. I reached out to these guys. I was like, I'd love to come in, and and they were like, cool, come. I think more out of curiosity than anything, because this is a kid from Meru, we don't know that many artists from Meru. We don't know any artists from Meru really at the time. So. So I would Friday get to. There's a friend of mine who was in high school with, Kisima, who was in school, and they used to stay in Ngara, right? Ngara, the houses in Ngara are quite expensive. So what people used to do is gang up as friends, and then so you find a bed sitter that has like 5-6 guys living in the same room. So
you just on the mattresses on the floor.
Yeah, right. And so I would show up. So I would Friday evening, I come. If the event's happening on Saturday, Sunday, I would attend, and then Sunday evening I would hit the road back to Juja. So that became my routine.
Who would run the shop during the time you're in Nairobi?
There was a lady. There was a lady that my cousin was seeing at the time, who's the wife right
who's
now.
Who's the wife now?
Yeah, so she was the one who's helping with the shop.
Which is the first event you went? Who did you connect with?
Slam
Who were the
Africa.
first guys you met?
Slam Africa is the first event I went to at that time. So at that time, the guys who used to organize it, Young Noise, and then there was Pepe A's, I think was Burundian. He went back to Burundi actually. And there was the Kenneth B's at the time. I went to slam. So I slammed because slam is a competition. We go so I slammed that first time, and I was first runners up.
Nice.
Kid from Meru, that was a big deal. That was a serious.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. Yeah. So and then
was there a monetary reward?
Yeah.
Was there a reward like pesa or something?
There was supposed to be, but I never saw anything. Basically, I think it depended with whether there was the resources, because what they do is they'll print a T-shirt for you. They'll so basically it wasn't that much, because also there wasn't much money in the scene at the time. So, but for me, I didn't care. I just needed the platform.
You've gotten a platform to express yourself.
So so basically, I can't say I got anything in terms of rewards, in a monetary reward from that. Yeah, but I slammed the first time. First runners up. I slammed 2-3 other times, where I don't really. And then the fourth time I slammed, which is May of 2012, I was crowned champion, right?
Wow.
Right. So and I think from that point, so it's just a matter of now keeping the ear on the ground. What event is happening where? So basically trying to kind of make sure, I become synonymous with the scene, right? So and it's been that way, while one thing leads to another, and then you meet people, they recommend you to other events, or they call you for the events, and it's been like that. And I did that 2012, 2013, 2014. I was felt like it's becoming a little too hard for me to keep on, hopping between Juja and town, just right. I felt like I was, in terms of being in Juja, I wasn't really getting much, right? So I felt like I needed to pretty much jump into the whole being an artist thing. Whatever happens, right? I didn't know what to expect.
Follow your passion, yeah.
Right? I just know I have to try. And so I was also doing a bit of graphic design on the side, as one of my things,
self-trained.
Yeah, self-taught. And so I was running a bit of, and then so I moved in 2014, early 2014, I decided to move I moved to Zimmerman at that time. So I moved to Zimmerman, and
got your own room, or you were sharing?
No, I got my own room, single room, hapo mahali, and then just started out life by myself now, and decided now I'm gonna focus on this artistry.
Too much to the world.
Yeah. So 2014 is when now I say, let's see where this artistic bag, takes me, right? So yeah, and then it's 2024, a decade later, and
and
we are here with Mutuma Mutua having a conversation about Dorphane's journey, right?
So let's talk about. So first of all, which are your genres? Which in performing arts?
I think I'm a poet. I'm a performing poet, right? Primarily that I can rap. I've been told I could sing if I put my mind to it. I probably could. Maybe I will at some point. But so I write. I'm good with melodies. So I write even for the hooks and the music I use in my songs. I've written a lot of those, right? So I basically I write. So I write a bit of poetry that I can't really be performed. So I also.
Do you play any instruments at the moment?
No, I've been learning the flute. The guitar is in my bucket list as one instrument. I think because of my songwriting abilities, I always feel like it's gonna be much easier when I learn the guitar. So I still intend to get my own guitar and learn how to play the guitar. That is something I have to do, right?
So here we are with Mutuma, award-winning.
Yeah.
How many awards have you won? Which awards have you won?
I quite a bit, but I don't know. I don't care much for awards really. Like, okay, but Slam Africa, that for me was big because of what it meant at that particular time, right? So for me, I would say that was major in terms of now kind of reassuring my journey as an artist, right? Because it kind of proved to me that I can do it, right? Because here I was, straight out of the village, right?
Coming to Nairobi and conquering.
Amongst the best of the best, and they've said I am good at it, right? So that meant a lot. I also like there was the Artivism challenge by Forum CIV a while back. So I was first runners up for that as well. So and that allowed me to work on my first album, From the Margins. So that's
before we talk about the album. When you're like doing Slam Africa, who are your contemporaries? Who are the other
contemporaries? A lot of people have kind of veered off other journeys, but my contemporaries, like my peers, are the Teardrops, the Mufasas, they are Pudo, Jicho Pevu. There was some guys whom we've lost along the way. There was CL Nook, who was actually the slam champion after mine. He's passed away a few years ago. There's so many. There's been so many. Yes.
Are you still in touch with some of these guys?
Some of them. Yeah, some of them. Yeah. And then we always meet. And also there's Ngatia. Ngatia went on to be a part to do like start of the Too Early for Birds, and he's a brilliant storyteller and poet, and and he's actually having a show coming up. So like a lot of these guys. So there's so many people. There's Abu Sense. There's a lot of them, right? There's I think I'm trying to think of the ladies that have been there, like Raya Wambui.
When I met you, because I met you in the human rights and social justice circles, I think you used to perform a lot with Mufasa. Did you start there together? Or?
No, actually, Mufasa was in. Mufasa came, I think, after me. Like because Mufasa, I'm the 34th Slam Africa champion. I don't know, but Mufasa is somewhere in between there, like between 30, 35, or not that, somewhere between 36 and 40, thereabout. Because, and even the guys who had the band, those are guys like came after, like, because they've, like, Shiraz is a Slam champion also, I think. ASAP, who's the like Mordecai, the lead vocalist, is also, he also slammed, right? So it's so a lot of these people, like I've seen.
So that space has nurtured.
Yeah, it's nurtured a lot of
people.
A lot of people. Like, because with that now, I think it kind of, because it exposed everybody to the opportunities available in the live performing scene. Because also I feel like spoken word has been very consistent in terms of providing platforms even for musicians. Some musicians have even started out as poets, right? And then as a way also growing their craft. But also if you're a poet, it makes you a better songwriter than if you're not, right? And even the people we played with, even people like Mutoria now, people like A-Rosh, these are people we've played with, like even when they were starting out. Yeah, we can say now they are our contemporaries, in terms of now they're the musicians, and then we are the poets. Yeah.
So how does Daniel's Mutuma become Dorphanage? What does Dorphanage mean?
I think now in regards to finding my independence, right, and claiming my independence and my individuality, I felt like, so, and also because as a hip hop head, so I've always like loved how hip hop names, or like a lot of them were provocative, like terms. So yeah, It's like having like notorious B.I.G. So he's calling himself big because he's big, like, and he's proud of his, of course you guys can make all the fat jokes you want, but I'm still,
I'm the BIG.
yeah, and he owns it to an extent where everybody now actually, that somebody who wouldn't necessarily become a sex symbol becomes a sex symbol, right? So yeah, but basically I think hip hop has a lot to do with now the kind of identity I took. So for me, Dorphan, I started out as Dorphan first. It's like, so I don't have both parents and an orphan.
So
right?
orphan, it's a wordplay.
Yeah. Right. And then my first name is D, whatever. Maybe if you're doing like the patword thing, you can say the orphan. So basically, it started out that way. So it's just and I was doing that because ordinarily is when people hear orphan, they expect you to be small, act small, right? It's like you need sympathy, so for me, I was just like, no, I'm not gonna be ashamed of this. Like, this is my reality. I'm going to own up to it. I'm going to embrace it, right? And by doing that now, I'm not only like kinda ensuring my own, like reassuring myself. I'm also kind of making everybody who's in that position feel like, yeah, you don't necessarily have to be small or feel small because, right? And so I, going to Dorphanage now is like Dorphan coming of age, like kind of,
okay,
right? And also, but also it's kind of mentality. Also, like, it's like an attitude in itself, right? Like an attitude of self-belief and
owning your space.
Yeah, owning my space and my identity, right?
So Dorphanage is it? So tell us about your first album. How many albums do you have?
One. I could have more. Like there's been, I think there's so many times I've put myself to working on an album, but then something happens along the way, right? But yeah, so my first album was From the Margins. Okay, actually no, my first album was in 2008-9. So after high school, I while in Timau, I hooked up with these two guys, right? So we grew up in church, right? So we hook up, formed this gospel group, right? And we're performing everywhere, or we're performing in schools and churches, and but at that time I'm waiting to get to college. I think these other guys also like kind of in the same space. So we formed the group, and we did an album then. I can't even remember what it was called. Yeah, but basically we did that. There was some CDs. We sold some CDs. But then I go to college, and then these other guys go into other things, and kind of,
Music was not a career at that time.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like we were all still in a journey of discovery, right? Because at that time I was still very much comfortable in my Christian identity, and now I don't. For me now, Christianity is just a part of my life that I used to be. Now I don't. I recognize myself as a human being, right? So I'm a human being, right? Christianity is just something I was born into. Right?
Nowadays, I've started referring myself as the chief priest of the religion of Utu, which is basically humanity.
Yeah, humanity, pretty much, right? So for me, I don't.
Actually, this podcast is called the Utu Na Uzalendo
Utu Na
Podcast.
Uzalendo, I know. Right, so for me, it doesn't matter whatever religion you proclaim. It doesn't matter what you subscribe to. For me, I only care about what kind of human being are you, right? Because and I think I stopped identifying myself as a Christian. I figured the more staunch you become, the more devout you become, like I became as a believer, whatever, is that the more bigoted I became, like more intolerant I became of people identify as something else, right? And I was like, no, I don't want that. I want to engage with people as just people, right? I don't want to have any preconceived judgments or notions. I want to relate with you as a human being first, and then everything else can come later. And that's the same way I hope that people engage with me. Right?
I think that's is becoming quite prevalent among Kenyans and Africans.
Yeah.
As we keep trying to rediscover our identity beyond the identities that we've been channeled into.
Yeah, because also because you see the same thing, that kind of because it's a tribalism of sorts, right? Because we just it's like, you see, it doesn't stop. This is the thing about these divisions. They don't stop. If you're prejudiced, you always find a reason to get prejudiced more. It's like, so first you're gonna be prejudiced against somebody because they are different race, right? And then there's gonna be a different country. Then it's gonna be a different tribe. Then it's gonna be a different clan. Then it's gonna be a different profession. Then it's gonna be a different, like appearance. Then it's gonna be,
gender.
Then it's gonna be, like even goes back to siblings, and it's like, my mom loves you more than he loves my son. She loves me, or dad loves you more than like. So it doesn't stop, right? So the moment you justify prejudice, you always find a reason to justify it, right? And so for me, I just don't want to justify prejudice for any reason, right? Whether it's profession, I want to sit down with lawyers and I feel like we can have conversations. I want to sit down with CEOs and feel like we can have a conversation, without people trying to proclaim their superior whatever, like professions or positions, right? I want to sit down with the president and have a conversation, regular conversation, right? Without all the hullabaloo of protocols and bureaucracies.
So how did you end up? So what was your initial focus in your spoken word? And how did you? Because I met you in the social justice space. So how did you end up speaking truth to power?
I think.
And is that what your album is about?
Yep. This is the thing about, for me, I always felt like, even as a kid, I was a very shy kid growing up, right? I was saying, like, I wasn't outspoken at all, right? I didn't know how to express myself. But I always felt like I had a lot I wanted to say. Like, even as a kid, I had this strong sense of justice. And I remember that because I didn't care getting punished if it was justified too. There's 2 times I ran away from home. And both times is because I felt like I was going to get punished for something I didn't do, right? So that strong sense of justice is always there with me. Like, so I felt like somebody okay, and I'm okay if you beat me up, like, for something I did wrong, because it's not, getting punished wasn't like, we always got ourselves whooped if we did, wrong, right? And rightfully so, most of the time.
Which is why, that explains why you felt the pain when your dad hit you for something you considered
so
not
because
worth it.
Other than that one time and on that one, and 2 more times that I ran away from home, it was because somebody was trying to punish me for something I didn't do. I wasn't going to wait for that to happen. Right? Of course, I was in a position to fight them. So the only way...
Why are you running to?
Just whatever. Like, I tried to get a job as a shepherd boy.
How old are you at that time?
I think I was in primary school. I was probably... Okay, I think the first time I was in my teens then. Like, I don't know. I was...
Early teens.
I was in my early teens then. Like,
Wow. So sense of justice.
Yes. So
does that reflect even in your first poetry when you're writing your first?
Yeah. It's for me, writing is just, when I started writing, I felt like my voice had been unlocked. Right? It's like now I have something to say. Right? I know. I've always had something to say. Now I'm beginning to understand how to say it. Like, I'm finding a voice on how to say it. And so that's when I started writing, right? And it was mostly to express myself, express my thoughts, my feelings. And I think with that comes that sense of justice. And so if I see something that is happening that is an injustice, I feel the need to express it. I feel the need to speak against it or speak about it, right? And it's that's the one thing I can say has been constant and consistent in my expressions. Like, it's about, like my true raw whatever expressions, right? And so yeah, so when my album happens, because from the margins, the scope had to be within Nairobi, so we kind of targeted Nairobi. So, but
Which year is this?
20. So the Artivism challenge was in 2020. That's when, but now 2020, because of COVID, we had to kind of. So basically, 2021 is when we got to working on the album, right? And we got working on the album in 2021, and when we do, so basically we go to the communities, like different communities, like basically. So we went to Mathare, went to Kariobangi, went to Kayole, talked to a group of young campus students, talked to a group of young South Sudanese youth, and basically picking their minds, right? Because we wanted to tell stories from the margins of the city, like the cracks and the crevices of the city, basically. So when sat down and so pick stories from there, and yeah, and also coming from the countryside, and especially now, when you hear stories from the slums, right? What happens is that you're hearing about the police shot down 5 gangsters, or police killed, so, and of course when you hear gangster, gangster means there's a dangerous person, right? But then you come here and you start hearing stories and you realize these are just teenagers who made youthful mistakes. But then living in Kibera or living in Madari or Dandora doesn't accord you.
Put you on the crosshair.
Yeah, doesn't accord you the privilege to make a youthful mistake and get away with it, right? So because of that, so a lot of young people have been dropped, and so for me, I wanted that story to be. I wanted to tell that story. I wanted people to kind of get that context, right? Because that's not something that like in the countryside, you rarely hear of policemen shooting down
extrajudicial killing.
Yeah, no. Anytime somebody, there's a higher likelihood of a mob lynching somebody than the police killing somebody, right? Unless it's an actual shootout,
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
it would be maybe they were robbing a bank or a shop or
and
something.
they shot back.
Yeah.
But other than that, you never hear people just getting killed for extrajudicial reasons. But in the city, it's a norm.
It's the norm, yeah.
Right? And so I wanted to tell that story from the side B of the story, where the one they don't report about, right? The one they don't tell you, they're going to tell you a gangster. They're not going to tell you this is a 15-year-old who was in high school, maybe, who was in high school, was brought up by a single father because their father was killed in the same manner, right? So basically, and also, and this is a 15-year-old who's forced to impregnate another 15-year-old in order to kind of have a bit of a legacy to leave behind, because they're not sure if they're going to live, right? So in there, there's a piece called Miaka ya Mbwa, basically, because and for me, that's because when I hear these stories, young people are living in dog years, right? A dog that is 25 years old, that's too old, right? 25-year-old dog is technically like toothless, right? And most young people in the slums don't live that long, right? And so these stories, I wanted them told. Like, there's this one story, this young lady was expectant, and the guy had already been killed by the police, right? And so basically, and that's the cycle. There's a cycle of single motherhood and sons that you don't know how long they're going to be around, right? Because
I think, was it 2 days ago or a few days ago, there was this video circulating of this young man, university student, who beat up a cop.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that once he was arrested, he was brutalized by the arresting cops.
Yeah.
And Kenyans are celebrating that. It's like,
Nah, I think, and this is because it's one thing to be reactionary about it, right? Because for me, one thing, I don't think that guy is in his right mind. One, so you beating him up. This guy needs like a psyche analysis to understand what's his mental state, right? Because you don't just beat up a cop, right? But you see, they're doing that to impose fear, right? You see, it's technically what has been happening around. Like, there's all these kind of militarization of because people lost, to a certain extent, people have lost fear of the cops, right? Because also the cops have become their own antithesis, right? They're being exactly what they're claiming to they're enforcing law and order, yet they're the most lawless, the most disorderly, right? So that's happening. So if and you see, in a system, this is my take. Any system is only as strong as the faith its subjects has in it. The moment people start losing faith in any system, it becomes useless. You see, the police are still the police because we still have faith that we need the police. But what happens now if the police are exactly who we are afraid of, yet they're the ones who are supposed to protect us? Then it means we feel the need to protect ourselves, right? And so for me, that's a manifestation of a much bigger, problem. We're talking right now, the president is coming from the States, and some of the things, the gifts he's come with is getting armored vehicles, right? So what exactly do you think is happening, right? Because that's optically that is telling you guys, we're going to deal with you. Yeah, we're going to deal with you, right?
And is that the story from the margins?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's this story of this young man repeated over and over.
Yeah. And you see, because it's the same thing as happening in the bigger scope of things.
Someone,
right?
actually, there's a group I saw, a WhatsApp group, and someone said he's lucky he wasn't killed. And I'm like, some of these times, the brutalization that he has gone through, maybe death is even better.
Yeah, could be. Because now you see, like, you see some of the outrageous things that happened, especially during COVID, right? During COVID, they put up the curfew to do what? To curb the pandemic, right? Yet, so you're protecting people from spreading a virus. But then there was over 200 cases of police brutalizing and even killing people. So you're protecting people from a virus that's going to kill them by killing them. Like
it's ridiculous,
Rona. So if we go by that kind of logic, because if that's what's happening, if you go by that kind of logic, of course I understand why somebody might feel, hey, I've got to fight back, right? I've got to fight back, and so it can be if we have IPOA, right? It's supposed to be like the police, pretty much, right? But what are they doing in terms of because you see, you're telling us to be law abiding when you can't follow the law, right? When you're supposed to be the biggest
lawbreaker.
Yeah, because you can't, because you're telling now for them arresting that guy and brutalizing him. What does that tell you? That's an emotional reaction, and you already have the system on your side, but you still.
And then they charge him with robbery with violence.
No, there's
which is all going to stand.
No, there's like 3 different counts. 3 different counts. Yeah, there's robbery with violence. I don't know, something about assaulting a policeman, something. And then there's something else. So whatever assaulting somebody that grievous harm, whatever. So there's like 3 different counts, and they are all serious counts, really. Okay, maybe Like maybe if he gets a good lawyer, he doesn't. Definitely, it's gonna serve some time.
I guess because it was on video.
Yeah.
The robbery bit is a bit over.
It's that's
on overreach.
Yeah, but they still gonna get him
for assault.
Yeah. Basically, to set an example with him anyway.
But for me, what is most worrying is the reaction of the society.
Yeah.
Majority of the society are actually who are aggrieved by the cops.
Yeah.
Majority of Kenyans are aggrieved by police.
Yeah.
But because this guy beat a policeman, society are kind of empathizing with the policeman more than even trying to find out why would these guys is saying maybe even needs to be taken for psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah.
But people are just siding with the oppressor.
I think it's sometimes.
Is it a reflection of our society?
I think we're deluded in so many ways.
Or what do we call it? Stockholm syndrome, where we empathize with the oppressor.
I think there's a cognitive dissonance about how we respond to things, right? There's a serious cognitive dissonance where, and you see, is we remove ourselves from the reality of the day because it's not affecting us at that particular time, right? It's like this: the doctors have been on strike, right? It's not the first time. But what do you think? Kenyans are the ones being affected with the doctors being away, right? Because these doctors are going to make it work. The doctors are going to be on strike. They're not going to show up on public hospitals. They are going to show up for private engagements, however. Right? So Kenyans are going to be saying, yeah, people are dying because... but the doctors actually have some really legitimate claims, right? But now also, if you look at where the lack of solidarity comes in, is because when other people, and that's why I'm saying this tribalism is bad, whether it's professional, whether it's classic, is really bad for everybody, is because now maybe some other people were striking because of the price of unga, right? You didn't show any solidarity with them. So now you're striking over your salary and over your working conditions. And these people are like, so now you're feeling it. Okay, when it was us, you didn't really, you didn't show any solidarity, but now it's you want us to show solidarity. So you see now that kind of creates the animosity in everybody now. So we all, instead of us galvanizing these numbers and making sure it's one unified voice, it's now each in their own pockets, each for themselves, right? And you see what that does, it just serves the establishment. Because the establishment knows. We can now like kind of spin this narrative to make the doctors look bad, right? We can use the moral, we can take the moral, card and then, and show how these doctors, they signed the whatever, like what do they call the Hippocratic Oath, right? And but they're betraying that by the fact. But hey, where doctors died during COVID because there was not enough, protective gear. So because I signed a Hippocratic Oath, I shouldn't demand better working conditions, right? And I think until we start, seeing beyond.
This moralizing is coming from politicians who loot taxes.
Yeah. How many billions are we losing today? Because I can tell you for sure, if you take out the wastage of money, like the wastage and that happens in this country, we don't need extra taxing people, right?
We actually budget here. We budget for the wastage today. I mean, when now the budget is being done, like this one of the finance bill 2024, they've already factored in what they're going to steal in the budget.
Now look at that. And they're not just going to steal that; they're going to steal more. It's not just they're not only budgeting for it; they are going to steal even for what they have budgeted for other things, right? So I understand when the governors are crying out that they're not receiving their money. I see that, but also you can't have it both ways, right? We see there's need for them for more money. We see but there's need for accountability as much, right? But at the same time, I feel like now they're playing politics with our taxes, right? Because now the fact that the central government is in control of the budget, it can use that to twist the county governments, right? And then and force them to fall in line.
How do we take control? I was going to ask, how do we take back control? But we've never had the control, so it's not taking back. How do we as citizens take control?
I think it has to start from the ground, right? Because this is the way I look. I always look at this system, the devolved system, is the easiest system to hold people accountable. Because before it used to be everybody is in Nairobi. Now you have people on the ground, right? But if you can't hold an MCA accountable, you damn sure are not going to hold the president accountable. So you start there. I'm sure every ward has an MCA, and people know that MCA's home. You can go to the MCA's home. So if you can't hold that guy mwenye unaweza tembea kwake accountable, how do you expect to hold the president accountable? Right? So if we can start from there, right? If we can start from there, demand accountability from there, and then use, because essentially you get the MCA, we put pressure on the MCA, you get the MCA to put pressure on the governors, the MCAs to put pressure on the governor, and the governors to put, and then also like now the MPs to put pressure on them. And these MCs, for the MPs, we have to demand way more, because they are the ones being used to pass these, kind of backdoor policies, that are coming to hurt us. We have to hit them where it hurts, right? And that's the pocket. But at the same time, I feel like we as far as now, like in terms of salaries and remuneration, we have to have that discussion. Because it's like you're having somebody getting paid, the most and doing the least, right?
Being paid and then being given allowances.
No, you're getting paid the most.
Even to sit and deliberate on these issues, there's a sitting allowance.
All right. And outside of that, now you see, with all this kind of neoliberal approach to things, where the lines between private and public are getting super blurry, right? They're getting seriously blurry. Where so you see now, like a lot of these people, the reason why a lot of people want to get into politics is that they can kind of find a way to get their private enterprises benefit from their political capital, right? And so people are starting companies, or they're using their family members to start companies, and then tendering those companies. So it becomes like the kind of business, the conflict of interest is humongous, right? So we can't make any headway because the money is going to very particular people. Because people say, this person spent this much in campaigns. But when that money is spent, who does it go to? Because I could say, I always feel like if there's 100% being spent on campaigns, probably the 30% or 20% goes to people. The rest of it goes to companies. Because if I'm printing t-shirts, right? If I'm printing t-shirts, for example, I don't manufacture those t-shirts. I don't manufacture the materials that makes those t-shirts, right? But there's a somebody here that I know who actually. So it might be I paid the River Road guy for printing, but I paid somebody else so much more for the t-shirts themselves, for the material itself, right? And so there's somebody actually who's benefiting. So out of every shilling that the River Road guy gets, there's probably 100 bob that has gone to somebody else who you never see. Who you never see, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? because people keep on justifying the mistakes we make, especially when we are voting on this is the one person that actually cares for us, ati alikuja akatuachia nini
200 ama 100,
it doesn't matter.
And is that how cheap we are as Kenyans? Like, what is your next album on?
So my next album is about really dysfunction, childhood struggles, trauma, parenthood, like basically family, right? But in that, because I feel like a lot of times when we're addressing the politics, the general politics, we forget about the politics itself, and that's where, because I feel like there's a very personal experience, right? That makes, for example, like even somebody like Ruto, the person he is, right? For that kind of for you to have that kind of inherent need to just wanna be wealthy, regardless of the implications of it, or to just wanna be on top of everything. Well, it has to be a very psychotic, like instinct in it, right? And that for me, it's an insecurity. If you like, for me, anytime I see that need to just amass wealth, it's a very insecure thing to do. And now, if you follow through, maybe this somebody's childhood, maybe somebody made them feel inadequate at some point as a child. Could be their parent, could be their friends, could be whatever reason. Could be maybe a girl they loved that didn't love them back, and they were like, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna be. And even when they won that battle, they still want to continue proving a point when you don't even need to prove the point, right? And that's the tragedy of all this whole, like,
and I think the thing about insecurity and low self-esteem is that even when you achieve, it's never, because you expected as well to feel something.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's like
not enough.
It's an addiction, right?
You still want more and more.
No, you just realize there's more places to go, there's more things to prove, and you just keep on going and going and going.
Or you come across more people who you feel are more accomplished than you.
Yeah.
And you want to outdo them. And
so, but where does it stop? Right.
I actually call it a bottomless. It's not like a black hole.
Yeah,
image
it's
of
a black hole. It's
of emptiness and lack of love and inadequacy. And I like the way you're exploring the politics of self, because a lot of the people who are messing up our society, and it's because they can't govern themselves. Then you make them governors to govern a society.
You can't tame your own instincts. And yet we expect you to, right? So you see also the higher you go, the more the stakes become, right? And that makes people. That's what makes such people dangerous, right? It's because the insecurity doesn't grow less, right? It doesn't become less; it becomes more. It's like the higher you go, because I always look at it and I'm like, it's like having a pimple on your face, like it's just there, right? And that's for me all these aerial growth looks like. It's like, the face supposed to be a certain way, but then when there's this, like kind of conspicuous pimple on it, that's what these people are, right? Because of course, if you have so much amidst the people who have nothing, you're gonna be pronounced, right? You're going to be pronounced. And of course, you have reasons to be insecure now. Like, your insecurities before that might have been imagined, but now they've become real. Because, of course, if people are saying, tuko na njaa hapa na kuna chakula pale, then they want the food, right? And they're going to do something to get the food.
And so it becomes self-serving,
right?
Self-perpetuating and self-confirmation.
Yep. But it's just that you can't do it alone. So it means now you have to co-opt other people into. And that's why now what even makes such people dangerous is not even them most of the times. It's the people around them. Because they have established an ecosystem of dependence around them who now know if something happens to this person, we all lose, right? So we have to make sure.
And especially if they are incompetent.
Yeah,
like
they're incompetent. Because what they have to offer, other than just that, be associated by whatever, either family, or blood, or relations, or association from wherever. What else do they have to offer? And so when I was doing this album, but also because I've realized along the while, like these conversations we don't have, and even through my own family experiences, that the dysfunction thrives in secret and silence. It thrives because people don't talk about it, because people don't address it, right? It's because we pretend it's not happening, right? So, for example, I along the way I meet up with one. So I came to find out when I was 22. I found out I had another sister, right? And then I go to ask, and I was like, yeah, there actually might be some more. 22. At that time, she was at Form 2, like. So basically, somebody who's within the age of, like the girlfriend I could have, right? So, and so what happened? And so I was like, I asked one of my uncles, like, we didn't know. Tulikuwa tunafikiria tu ni rumor. Ni rumor. They knew, because my one of my late uncles, like the second born after my dad. So I hear stories now, like when he used to get drunk, that's when he was like, we're gonna send him to Bob. My dad's name was Robert, so they used to call him Bob, right? Send him to Bob, but then he gets sober and that's forgotten, and And so,
have your grandparents, did they embrace you? Did they experience you as an artist?
Nah. Okay, by the time my grandfather passed away in 2009.
Also, you hadn't started.
So I hadn't quite, like, I was just, so he didn't really experience that, right? 2008. Well, it's 2008. 2008 actually, right?
That's when you were in the Meru slums.
No, that's what. At that time, I hadn't even. I just finished high school then, right? I was still looking for a school actually to like, for college to go to. But also I think that's the one time that same year is the one time we had that really, like, the one vulnerable conversation I've ever had with him. That conversation that actually kind of he was a very serious man, like very serious, right? And so that's one time because I had never seen that side of him before. But I was looking for a school, right? And I knew he was kind of connected, so he would have assisted a bit. But then it was like, where just end that after shule and could let it to barua, right? So he didn't wanna. He needed me to kind of do it myself, right? Which which I did my best to do. But basically, so what he told me, so he told me the story about my uncle, the second born, that when he was in high school, like, he was his most trusted child. Basically, he was his most trusted child. He had so much hopes for him, right? And he was a bright kid in school as well. So so when he was in high school, so he thought he was like a model student and everything, well disciplined. But then they used, apparently, so when they was in high school, they used to go out and at night they go to drink out, like, and so this time, I don't know, something happened at the bar they were in. The police showed up and then they had to run away. But then he had a very particular watch, my uncle, at that time. He had a very particular watch, and he kind of left his watch on the table. So when it was followed up, it was like, and so eventually, so when my grandfather was told, it was like, no, it can't be him, right? But then he went, and then, whose watch is this? It's yours. Where did you leave it? And then so eventually, so he admitted, like, he was out there. They were drinking at night, and I think that broke his heart.
So he discovers that he has a totally different side.
Yeah, that broke his heart. Yeah, because I think that kind of. And so I think that the one time he kind of shared a vulnerable, like, self-like story where I understood. I understood why he didn't want to. It's like he didn't want to emotionally invest in my endeavors as much, so that in case I don't.
So he's protecting himself.
Yeah. In case, and I know, because he wanted me to join the military, right? When I finished the high school, he wanted me to join the army, right? He had the connections to make it happen, right? But I was like, because I'm not a yes sir, no sir kind of person. Me, if you tell me let's go, I want to know where, why, what are we going to do, right? So I'll probably have joined the military, got marshaled within the first year or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So so I that was and that's the hardest thing I've ever had to, because it wasn't an easy man to say no to, right? But I had to say no because I felt like that wasn't me. That was right.
So like I think that's also part of what you talk about. The politics of self.
Yeah.
It's how our parents, guardians impose themselves on us and their dreams.
Yeah.
Such that you talk about your grandfather and his son. He has brought up a son up to teenage level, but he really doesn't know the son.
Yeah.
Only to come and discover when the son is, is arrested or whatever.
Yeah.
That he's been a stranger to that person for 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
And our society, how does the society get us there? I think as capitalism has something to do with it.
Yeah, no, it has everything to do with it. It has everything to do with it because, for me, the way I look at it is it was a disruption of cultures, right? And not just that, it's like a mix. It became a cocktail of cultures, because there was always a material tag that came with it. It's like how did people embrace Christianity? People didn't embrace Christianity because they wanted to embrace Christianity. People embraced Christianity because they were blackmailed into Christianity, right? Because one, Christianity was brought with goodies, and these goodies is like education, this thing. So you become a part of a particular cabal, right, of people. So basically, if you're a parent and you wanted your child to join a school, it's either they have to subscribe to either Catholicism, or they have to subscribe to Pentecostalism, whatever, or Methodism, like where I come from. So it was they have to subscribe to that first. So they have to, proclaim themselves Christian for them to. You can't just join the school because you're interested in education. No, it has to come with the indoctrination part of it. You can't, right? And that's how so most people, if it was a choice, they wouldn't have picked it. They only picked it because the stakes were too much for them to give up, right? But also you understood, like, if your kid doesn't go to school, like, you're pretty much being left behind, right? And that's why you see the people who suffered the most are the people who didn't embrace it because they didn't take their. So it's because they told you your child has your traditions are evil, so you have to negate your traditions and join this kind of belief. And for the parents who are serious enough that they didn't want to compromise that, now the punishment they get is that your kids don't get an education, right? You also don't get to. So basically, there's no upward mobility for your family from that point onwards. So you're pretty much left behind, right? And the people around you start moving. And those are the people now eventually who have the education to come and run the country eventually, right?
As happened with the Mau and the collaborators.
My grandmother was a student around that time, around the emergency time, right? So and you see, for her, the kind of, like, even when I'm having a conversation around, for me, I'll talk about Mwariama with such reverence because I get the struggle.
Tell us about Mwariama.
Yeah, I get the struggle, right? But then for her, when I talked to, like, the one time I've tried talking to her about Mwariama, I was like, you should have seen them. Like, they were like devils. So basically, but which I understand, I get, if I didn't understand the context that she came up in, I would probably, I would be very sad, in itself. But now I get, she's a student, in that, 50s, 60s period, right? And basically she's in primary school where the school administration is white people, and the teachers are just, the teachers being slapped around by the administrators of the schools. Right? If a teacher did something that was considered, out of line, they would get slapped in front of their students, right? Right. So that fear itself, right? That psychology of fear and psychology of superiority, dominance,
which comes from inferiority, the same narcissism from low self-esteem.
And so somebody like my grandmother who's gonna go on to become a teacher herself, right? So basically, but that's the psychology that makes a childhood, right? And then you're thrown into the system, and so you have to adhere within the rules of the system. So I understand why she can't get the politics of it, and I can't.
And you have a system that punishes you for not conforming.
Yeah, and now even for me, even for me now going off the rails, right? Because that's pretty much what I did. Like I went against everything that everybody expected, They would have preferred I pursue my IT and become a professional IT
or become a soldier,
technician, or become the soldier that my grandfather wanted me to become. Because that comes with safety and stability, right? But then even as a kid, I always felt like everything is so limited. Like it's like you're telling me these are the only dreams I can really pursue. I feel like,
become a doctor,
I feel like none
of
those dreams really embody me. Like I was a bright enough student to have become anything, any of those things, but they didn't really have the pull on me, right? And so you asked about Mwariama. So basically, growing around Timau, my rural home and where Mwariama used to live is like barely 5 kilometers away, right? But even then, there was not enough information about it. So we just used to hear the area is called Kiambogo. So it's like Mwariama used to be a part of the Mau Mau, and of course, but the story of Mau Mau is not being told in a revered manner. It was told in a very it's kind of hush and kind of dismissive way.
I guess that was the final victory of colonialism. That they were able to shape the narrative around the Mau Mau and demonize them.
Demonize them, that's the word actually.
With the Kenyatta's government.
Like it was such a dismissive manner, right? So even then it was told in such a dismissive manner. But for me, I think it stuck with me. Like even then I didn't know much of history. The history that is taught in schools is not enough to really get you politically aware. But for me, such stories because I think being the kind of person, like the kid I was, because even now when I was taken on by my grandparents, I became very clear to me that was nobody's priority. Because I should have been my parents' priority, but then they were not in a position to prioritize me. So I became my grandparents' burden to bear, and they had already done their parenting. So for them, they were going out of their way to. In my own weird way, I understood that reality. But also growing around my cousins, their mother was there, and their mother was, proactive in there. But even most of the time, she's the one who's gonna buy us clothes. But of course, as a kid, you're very aware of the tiny kind of
stratification.
Yeah, they're very clear. And so for me, anytime I felt like I was slighted, anytime I felt like I would just go off and cry it out by myself. And then so you move on, right? But also what that did is kind of allowed me to step out of my own life, become a spectator in my own family's life, just kind of watch from a distance, right? Without really being scared of hurting people's feelings. Because the reason why we don't become critical of the people we care about is because we are afraid to hurt their feelings.
Yeah, you don't want to hurt their feelings.
Right? for me, I didn't care about that. I didn't feel like anybody had invested enough. Okay, I owed anybody enough to not, to want to care not about hurting their feelings, right? And only that at that time I didn't know how to say it, but now eventually now
when you found your
I found my voice in the arts, and now that's the reason why I can write about some of these things in the most vivid manner I can, and not care about. I know my family is not gonna be happy about my coming album, okay, because some of the pieces I've performed before, and of course news imefika huko, and people have been very uncomfortable about the things I've had to say, but I don't care.
Do you perform in Meru?
I've performed a few times. I would love to do more performances in Meru, but the scene is still kind of got arrested in development at some point, like where it's like things are happening but not as much. I'm a people feel like because also this all kind of I think the old vernacular radio stations and everything, as much they have their cons, they have their pros, right? They have the pros, like the pros in as they can, they're able to more news is able to reach people, but at the same time it can also limit certain people in terms of a world view, right?
That is their purpose, actually.
Kind of tames people's worldview.
Most of these stations are owned by politicians.
Yeah. So it kind of tames people's worldview that now they are okay. It's like, whereas before you were forced to kind of understand Swahili or learn Swahili so that you can consume news, or English so that you can consume news, so now you don't feel the need to really like do any bit of self-improvement, because hey, if you want the news, you get them. But now what you don't understand is the politics even around the reporting of the news itself, right? Because the politics around that is that, somebody is telling you a bit of truth, not the whole truth, right? Just enough for you to know, but not enough for you to want to discern.
They want you hooked, and then they want to put like the horses, the way you have those, that like you move in a certain direction. Yeah.
And so I always feel like so many spaces are scared of people like me and people like you.
Mwariama.
Yeah. They're scared of that because we are forcing them to step up, right? It's like what we do forces them to kind of elevate themselves, but they're too comfortable in their normal living.
They don't want to upset the apple cart.
Pretty much what happens in public institutions. So if you go to, maybe if you're a young person, you go to a government office, you get a job there, and then you're coming with new ideas. You're telling these people, we can do this, we can do that. Those guys are like, hey, bana, tumeona wengi. Because essentially what you're telling them is that they need to improve on themselves. They need to step up. But then for them, they're too okay with they're beneficiaries of the way the system is, that they don't want any sort of disturbances, right? And that's the case now, even in the way now people. So it's like people feel intimidated, but now because also a lot of people, maybe they are more economically, the economic status is higher than yours. Like, what do you have to tell me? Niambia nini wewe na wewe hata una pesa bana.
I can buy you.
Unajua? Alright. So, but essentially, they're just intimidated by the fact that you're more knowledgeable than they are. Like you have.
And then you have the courage to speak it out.
You have the courage to speak it out, right?
How do you keep going? Like, well, because what you're talking about is it's always an uphill.
Yeah.
You're always against society, against your peers, against.
No, it's technically going against the grain in every way. I think the way because I'm a student of not just history. I'm a student of life as is. I'm a student of not just Kenyan history. I'm a student of this history of the world, right? And I think somebody articulated quite well. Like Hugh Newton, the founder of Black Panther movement, is like, so you say like the first lesson a revolutionary must learn is that he's a doomed man, right? And I think quite early on in my artistic life and whatever, and I figured out like I kind of came to terms with the doom of it, right? with the doom of being the kind of person I am, because I'm a disruptor. I'm not comfortable with just letting things be the way they are. I want, and it's not just a disruption thing, because it's the disrupt. Actually, the most disruption is not even physical; it's mental, right? Because once you flip it, like how somebody perceives life, then that changes everything, because that impacts how they live life going forwards. That impacts how they bring up their own families and everything, right? So it's the ripple effect of it that actually counts, right? So for me, I came to terms with that doom, and that's how I keep going, knowing that it's never gonna be easy for me, but I will be giving more to the world than what I'm taking out, and I'm okay with it, right? Yeah, the stories of other revolutionary figures also, like it kind of give me a glimpse of the possibilities, and then the wins that people never see as wins, right? Because you see, for example, when I look, I understand why my family would want me to do something that offers more safety and more stability, more economic success, right? Because it makes them safe to know that I'm safe, like, but also because my disruption might also bring disruption in their own lives. So I get that there's a self-preservation aspect of it, but at the same time, the kind of wins they don't see is that you're looking at the immediate benefits of things. Me, I'm looking about at the long term, right? Because I give the story of, for example, Bob Marley, right? If you look at Bob Marley's life and childhood, right? Marley's father, right, was a white man, right? Worked in the forestry department, I think, in Jamaica. He was a British guy. And Bob Marley's mother, this is a guy was like quite polygamous in himself. Like, he was another Casanova. So he had he had different women and different children. And Bob Marley's mother was like the bottom of the barrel, like in terms of now the
hierarchy.
The hierarchy of the women he had associated himself with, right? But the reason we know the Marley name right now is because of Bob, right? So when he's singing that song about the cornerstone, or the rejected son becoming the cornerstone, it's pretty much him, right? Like, nobody would have thought like a kid like that would become this kind of voice of reason and global icon, that is gonna shape a lot of people and a lot of people's thoughts in the ways it does even to date, right?
And lead the way into new consciousness.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
I think part of a lot of the thinking that we are doing and the examination of history could be traced to among part of the conscious music already.
Yeah. All right. And so, and because even for part of the inspiration, even as an artist, it's people like him, right? It's people like him, people like Lucky Doobies, people like Tupac Shakur. Yeah, I feel like so I resonate.
And I see a thread there. People without fathers or present fathers.
Yeah, people like Fela Kuti, right? But this is the thing also. This is the thing is hardship or pain or suffering, whatever you want to call it, provides clarity, right? It provides the kind of clarity on what's really what's important and what's not, right? You will never have time to be self-critical and self-analytical when you're okay, when you're in a privileged position. You can only really become self-critical and analytical properly when you're going through it, right?
When you have to confront situations.
Yeah, because you're trying to make sense of life from a much more basic level. Because at the bottom of everything, it's a very basic foundation to Everything else is just decorative, really. Like it's like when you ask when you ask an architecture to give you a breakdown of this building, right? They're gonna strip it down to mere grids on paper, right? But for somebody else, it's just gonna look at, hey, the mirrors look good, the interior design, the decorative aspects of it. But for an architecture, they will just have to break it down to
the structural bits.
Yeah, to the structural bits, right? And that's what, like, now that's the clarity because eventually you realize it's not, these things are just, you can always come up with different ways of decoration, right? But if you don't have the right basic structure, the right fundamental structure, then you don't really have anything. All you have is a building, or something that is gonna either fall down at some point, right? Or it's never gonna work the way it's supposed to. Right?
And I guess when you talk about the politics of self, it's going to the fundamentals.
Yeah, it's the fundamentals.
Because society is made up of individuals.
Yeah.
And if you have these individuals then not being able to govern themselves, then they cannot create a society that works.
No, look at it this way, right? All these figures, all these public figures, all these politicians, all these, popular people, a lot of them, what do they have in common? They were privileged in their childhood. And the privilege doesn't necessarily mean they were born in well-off families. It means either they were privileged because they was the smart kids in class, or because that comes with privilege too, right? So because you are the smart kid in class, your parents went out of your way to provide you the kind of life your other siblings never had. Because they're looking at you and they're looking at the future of the family. This is the person who's gonna,
who's gonna take us out
of the block, basically.
Yeah.
And so from a very young age, these quote unquote bright people, these quote unquote smart kids, are given a special treatment, right? They get away with things that everybody else can't get away with, right? So even if they grow up to become deviant people, they will do, they will do a lot of perversive things that will be covered up because,
Yeah, I've never looked at it like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so you get away with responsibility and ownership long enough. What happens? You become entitled to that special treatment, right? And then so if this person goes on to become maybe a CEO somewhere, or a president, or an MP somewhere, tell me why they're not going to continue doing those things. Now they even have the apparatus and the systems to cover themselves up, right? To protect themselves. It's like even when you follow up on stories like even the R. Kelly stories and all these P. Diddy stories, what do they have in common? These guys are not being like it's not that eventually the world has gotten to a point where the moral compass is stronger than before. But it's just that they've figured out their economic, influence on certain people, and they start demanding their independence, and then because they were allowed to do all these things along the way without being held to account. So these people finally figure out, okay, now you want to become a liability. Now we are going to use all these secrets we know about you against you, right? But they let them get away with those things for years and years and years, right? Until the point where they feel now you're becoming a liability to us. You want to take something away from us. Now we have to hit back.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Yeah. That has happened to a lot of prominent Black people.
Yeah.
You are allowed to misbehave as you're coming up.
No, even here.
That is used against
even here, all these assassinations, what do you think happens, right? Hey, all these, people have been killed for, right?
I think we even have a thing of if, let's say, a job is advertised by government, we want a manager or an undersecretary. And then you get 5-10 people applying, and then you're shortlisted 3 people who are completely qualified and competent.
Yeah.
They will look for the person who has skeletons in the closet. That's the one they'll hire.
Yeah, because that's you fit the position of a fall guy. If worst goes to worst, then we can easily build a narrative around why,
And how do we move away from this? How do we imagine a different society, a more humane Utu society?
It has to start from the ground up, right? That's what we have to now to address the politics of self now, right? And that's why now, because if as we can see now, it's beginning with how we socialize even children, right? Then we have to start from there. You can't treat kids like you, even in a nuclear setup. You're having kids like there's classism within that nuclear setup. And that's why you have most that's why they say the thing about having mothers love particular sons, because when they come with shopping, amemjengea nyumba. But if you look at it, that's a very kind of it's a capitalistic, corrupt way, or because there are things bigger. There's probably the other sons who are not as wealthy. They're probably the ones keeping that mother alive, right?
I've seen that. I've seen cases where
they're the ones who,
a son remains at home.
Yeah.
Didn't do very well in school. So takes care of the mother, takes care of the farm. But the mother does not value them as much as this guy who comes shopping at the end of maybe once a year.
No, we have, and you see now that all skewed, like perspective about value, where we look at people and it's like we value people because it's the material
things they can get from them. But
sometimes the most valuable things are not the material. It's like, and so in Meru, there's this saying, there's a saying I used to hear as a kid, right? Where they say, so basically, loosely translated means like a coward goes back to their mother in one piece. But then for me, I always had a problem with that phrase, right? It has to have come from a capitalist or from the colonialists for sure, yeah? Because it has to have been coined by the capitalists or the home guards right? Right? Because if a coward goes back to their mother in one piece, who's keeping the mother alive? For me, then it's like, okay, sawa, a coward goes back to their mother alive, but the hero is the one that keeps the mother alive, right? And that's the one, and that's the and you see, those are two different philosophies altogether. So, and this is the philosophy that kind of shaped our reality, the philosophy of cowards going back to their mother in one piece. But then nobody ever asked themselves, how is the mother staying alive, right? Without the hero standing between the mother in danger, there wouldn't be a mother to go back to, right? And so for me, I choose to go. Right? If I can stand between my mother and danger, then I can stand there, regardless of whether they write songs about me or not. I think that's how we're keeping going. You have to understand it's a choice, and it has to be a very personal choice. It's a collective struggle, but the choice has to be very personal, because otherwise you're always gonna. And because we also like in the system we're in, like there's a lot of people masquerading to be a lot of things. There's a lot of people masquerading to be revolutionaries and activists and who are really in it for themselves, right? So if you go in it because we have this gang of revolutionaries, we have this gang of activists that we work with. Then what happens if they betray you? Then it means,
and there's been a lot of betrayal.
Yeah, a lot. Then it means because your being in the struggle was pegged on that camaraderie. Then it means once the camaraderie is gone, even your motivation for your beliefs is gone. Your convictions, they lose base, right? So your convictions have to be yours before they are collective, right? If you're joining a collective, you already have a conviction that you live by, that you stand by. Otherwise, you're going to be betrayed and you're like, okay, hata mimi wacha pia mimi nikule.
How do we ensure that the kids who are coming up, religion is and the corporate world is very good at capturing people when they're young, whether it's through Sunday school or madrasa or advertising, to young kids. How do we, who imagine a different society, get to influence those young people?
I think we have to, beyond now the conversations. The conversations is one way to go, right? As having these conversations, because by these conversations, these are knowledge resources, right? We are shaping thinking here, so that's one way to go. But at the same time, we have to now structuralize this knowledge, right? In a way that it's structuralize it in a way that now we can say there's an alternative school of thoughts. Like people say that phrase, but now it's just a phrase people use, right? Where there's actually an alternative school of thought that allows kids to learn a different way of living, right? A different way of life. Because it's organized. This other side is organized and properly organized, right? So unless we also organize to an extent, then it's very hard to, right? Because then it means even if you manage to oust whatever, even if you manage to oust the powers that be out, there's still a vacuum left because there's no organized.
So you need to
replacement.
You need to build.
Yeah.
This other alternative.
Yeah. And you see, and by that is essentially you can't really know who's who for sure, but you can at least tell who's, because there's a reason why you reached out to me and not just anybody else, right? It's because there's an alignment in purpose between what I'm doing and what you're doing, right? And that's how we continue to build this solidarity and build these communities. And essentially now, eventually now we know who stands where, So if I need this done, I know I can loop this person in. If I need this done, I know this person, right? Because then we're taking out. It's like we're using the enemies, like weapon against them, right? Pretty much.
Yes, that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's what you're doing.
Because essentially we're all human beings, right? We are all human beings, and we are limited by our human abilities, right?
And the fear that was drilled into us by school.
Yeah, right. But the fact that it's possible for me to be here, because I didn't go to any special school that taught a revolutionary discourse. No, I went to the school that everybody else that I know went to. But somehow, I turned out different than everybody. Whether maybe that's fate, I don't know. Whether it's whatever there are superior powers at play here, I don't know, right? But one thing I know is that this is gonna, and then these are the feedback. Even people have come to me and say, like, you changed the way I perceived certain things. You made me step up in certain ways, even in my own life, right? You changed how I used to perceive this or that. You challenged me to want to do better even as a citizen or as a person, right? And that's what matters, because like we said, it's all here. Like the bigger battle is mental, right?
And which is where the battleground has been.
Yeah.
Because whether it's religion, whether it's school,
the indoctrination happens.
The indoctrination happens in the mind.
Yeah.
And I guess those are the barriers we are trying to remove, you and I.
Yeah.
To help, not to indoctrinate, but to help people free themselves so they can find their better potential.
We're just asking people to question more, right? We're just asking people to question more, because it's essentially a matter of the questions you're asking. But you see, as long as there's those untouchable things, untouchable topics, it means you always be scared of going to certain places. And I think even as I was been working on this album, I remember a few months, like 2 months ago, when Mukoma spoke about, you know, his father's relationship with his mother, right? You know, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and then about the abuse. That, I think what it showed me, actually, for me, it kind of reinforced my need to do this album, because those are the conversations I'm hoping this album gets to provoke. You know, like, to whom do I owe solidarity? Do I owe my father solidarity simply because he is my father? Or do I owe my father solidarity because he's actually a virtuous human being, right? So is this like, because I should not spill the beans because, hey, it's your father, you don't speak
ill of the legacy,
right?
You're trying to put him back in the bottle.
No, but you're not destroying the legacy. The legacy is there.
You're humanizing
you're humanizing it, right?
You're telling us
he's not a god.
Human,
He's a human being. He's made his mistakes. But now also, you're holding him to account to those mistakes, right? Because somehow he's managed to live through his life without owning up to those mistakes. Yet they happened, right? And that's for me, that's what makes art such a powerful, right? The fact that you can humanize these conversations, the fact that I can, when I write, I've written a piece about my father and the relationship that wasn't, and I'm not really like, there's probably a time if I had written that piece, it would have been like pretty much like a rant, like a serious rant and everything. But by the time I actually got to write it, I'd really gotten to a point where I was gracious about, right? So of course I'm spilling the beans, but at the same time I'm according him the grace to understand that now I'm an adult myself. I see how certain things can happen, right? Because I'm not living in the same context he was living in, right? And I think that's how also we have to kind of navigate.
That's the ultimate, because it's
yeah.
being able to see other people's frames, other people's perspectives, and appreciating that you might have your perspective, but that does not negate other people's perspectives. And what next? So when are we expecting your album?
It should have come out by now, but curveballs and all. So I'm hoping that within the next 2 months, I'm going to release the album. Yeah, but it has to come out, before this year ends.
And where can people find your content? Like the first album?
The first album is available on all digital streaming platforms. So for Spotify, Apple Music, Boomplay, all those. And YouTube as well.
Or
Dorphanage. Yeah, so if you search Dorphanage, you're gonna find me everywhere. YouTube as well. Dorphanage blog. It's just simply like orphanage with a D at the front. Like, yeah. And then I'm on all the other social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter.
Is there a place where you regularly perform?
Regularly? Pre-COVID, there used to be places where there's regular. But I think post-COVID, there's just been, we haven't found a rhythm that you can say like, this is where it is happening. But yeah, so mostly it's once in a while, there's maybe I'm going to organize my own event. Other times I'm going to be performing somewhere at another event, either another artist event or maybe an open mic somewhere. Or maybe I'm called for a commissioned gig somewhere, right? So it's different places. But if you're following up on my social medias, you always get information on what's happening where.
We've seen American comedians now do these 1 hour specials. Is there a likelihood of a Dorphanage 1 hour special?
I've done concept shows which are pretty much like specials for poets, right? I've done about kind of like 6 over the years.
And they're on YouTube.
Not all of them. Some are on YouTube as like performances for different pieces, but there's only one, the Mwariama one. That's the one that's on YouTube now. Like that's the one I did last year. I'm planning one like this year. I have to do one. This year, I want to. I think now I want to do. I want to do more recordings also. Like I want to do more because there's a lot of content that I've written over the years that I feel like I haven't really like let go, and it's kind of weighing me down even in terms of creating new works. So I want to release this album. I want to release another album. Not far after that, but also I'm so want to compile my poetry into an anthology. Yeah, so and there's a lot, and also do more in terms of kind of mentorship and education. Like and for education, I feel like um education in terms of like writing, creative writing, but also in terms of writing for change as well, right? Because I feel like there's not enough of that happening. Like, there's actually none of that happening where we can say like people are getting prepared. So because like how I came into this space, for me it's like my own drive, my own personal drive that got me into the spaces you met me, right? But other than that, so if an artist, for example, was interested in that, like wanted, like how do they go
What
about
is the
that?
process that you have to go?
Yeah, so I want to do more of that. Either is by offering workshops, facilitating workshops, and so I'm trying to lay down the kind of structures to make that.
And that's
Yeah.
actually the purpose of this Utu Na
Yeah.
Uzalendo
Yeah.
podcast is to amplify, to amplify you, amplify the others, so that
Yeah.
those who are inclined can find you, can learn from you, can be mentored by you.
Yeah.
It's about also mainstreaming what is not considered.
Yeah.
normal. Conversations that so to inspire the younger
I think
people.
not just the conversations and the personalities, like that, because people need to understand that like there's people actually, because everybody thinks about these things, right? People just, others are not exactly know how to articulate it, or others don't know exactly what's happening, why it's happening. So when this happens, kind of puts two and two together for somebody who was in a personal quest. And I think that way, kind of we're bridging the gaps, and even in terms of intellect, in terms of knowledge, right? Because it's as much a matter of access as it is a matter of interest, right? So
and exposure also.
Exposure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, access, because most people don't know. People don't know because they're not interested to know. They don't know because they haven't been able to access this knowledge, right? Information. And also considering that our school system is about elimination, really, it's like the more compromising you are, the more you're bound to be rewarded, right? If you're really very clear about what your interests and what your passions are, and you're not as compromising, you're going to be eliminated along the way, because hey, we don't want disruption here. So
you're replaceable.
Yeah,
because you're uniform. School uniform.
Yeah, it's like you have to.
You're a piece that can be removed and replaced immediately with others.
Yeah.
So, Dorphanage, thank you so much for honoring us. I know this conversation is just the beginning.
It's just the beginning.
There's a lot that we need in
unpack,
season
basically.
2. We need to unpack much more of what we are doing in the present and the future. And please keep speaking to us as our conscience. You don't just speak truth to power; you also speak truth to us. To your contemporaries and to the citizens, because I think the citizen of the future, either Kenyan or African, has to be very different from the current
it has to be.
We have.
It has to be.
We have to come from a very different place to build the alternative that you're talking about. Asante sana.
Asante pia kwa kunipa nafasi na pia kunialika. It's been a pleasure. It's not every day like you get to do an in-depth conversation of this sort. And for what you're doing, like with the Utu Na Uzalendo podcast, because I think at a certain point, the mainstream media pretty much become a regurgitation of gutter of gutter press, like.
Yeah, to dumb us
right?
down.
Yeah. So, but there's need for this, right? So there's need for this, and we have to do our bit, right?
You're using their tools against them.
Yeah, for sure. And we said technology is a double-edged sword. It's just that you have to be smart enough to know which side to wield it to, because it can be used against you as you can easily use it against the other side, right? So yeah, and I think that's the thing. We are trying to wield this sword to the side that it's gonna cut to our advantage.
Thank
right?
you. Yeah, we are gonna do this again soon. I think there's a lot to unpack, which you can do in 1 hour, 2 hour show.
Yeah. So by that time, by that time, definitely the album will be out, and we can talk more about that. Yeah. So
and the fallout.
Yeah.
The likely fallout.
Yeah.
So bana. Thank you so much.